My name is John Miller, and at 60, I thought I knew every facet of evil in this world. I was wrong. The cruelest betrayal came from within my own family, disguised as love and care. What I discovered that Friday afternoon in Phoenix, Arizona, forever changed my perception of trust, family, and survival. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which state you're listening from. The silence of the desert afternoon was shattered by words that froze my blood. I had arrived at my daughter Marina's house in the Scottsdale suburbs with a gift for my granddaughter Isabella, thinking I'd give her a pleasant surprise that Friday in March. The wrought iron gate was ajar, and I could hear voices coming from the backyard, where the pool reflected the blazing Arizona sun. My natural curiosity led me to skirt the adobe fence surrounding the property. Andre, my son-in-law, was on the phone near the barbecue grill, and his voice carried a coldness I'd never noticed before. The words that came out of his mouth made me question everything I thought I knew about him. "Don't worry, the old man will never find out," Andre said with a sinister laugh that echoed through the quiet courtyard. My heart began to pound as I hid behind the ornamental cacti Marina had planted when they moved into the southwestern-style house. The dry smell of the desert, mixed with the cold sweat that was beginning to trickle down my forehead, created a stifling atmosphere. Andre continued pacing back and forth between the pool and the gourmet area, gesturing with his free hand as he held his iPhone. His next words confirmed my worst fears. The betrayal was happening right under my nose, in the $400,000 home I had helped finance for my only daughter. "When he dies, everything will be ours," Andre continued, his voice lower, almost a conspiratorial whisper. My legs trembled, and I had to lean against the fence to keep from falling. 60 years of living in the American Southwest had taught me to recognize danger, but I never imagined it would come from within my own family. The relentless Arizona sun beat down on my face, but I felt a chill creep up my spine. Andre stopped walking and positioned himself near the glass doors of the living room, checking to make sure no one was around. His paranoia was evident, but he didn't know I was there, just a few feet away, listening to every venomous word that came out of his mouth. "Listen carefully," Andre said, his voice taking on a more urgent and calculating tone that made me realize the depth of his betrayal. "We can't wait any longer. The guy's 60 years old, but he looks like he'll live forever," he laughed cruelly, a sound that made me feel sick. The man I considered a son was talking about my death as if it were a stock market trade. My breathing became ragged as I tried to process the magnitude of what I was discovering. A thirst for revenge began to build in my chest like a desert storm rapidly gathering on the horizon. Andre checked his surroundings again before continuing his diabolical phone conversation. "Marina doesn't suspect a thing," he said, with evident satisfaction in his voice. "She trusts me completely." Those words were like stabs to my father's heart. My daughter, who had moved to Arizona to escape the harsh Chicago winters, was being manipulated by this man in whom I had placed my complete trust. The sound of a coyote howling in the distance contrasted grotesquely with the darkness of the words I was hearing. Andre walked a little further away, past the pool area, but his voice still reached me in crystal clarity in the dry desert air. Every syllable was a revelation of his true nature, a nature he had masterfully hidden for 10 long years. "The plan needs to be executed next week," Andre said, and I felt my world completely collapse. My mind began to race, trying to understand every detail of this conspiracy against my life. The distinctive scent of desert sage mingled with the bitter taste of fear that filled my mouth. Andre was planning something terrible, and I only had a few days to figure out exactly what it was. My breathing became increasingly labored as the reality of the situation solidified in my mind like the concrete in the foundations of this house. The person I trusted most after my daughter was plotting my death in the shadows of the Phoenix Mountains. Andre ended the call with words that made me realize time was quickly running out. He said, "Don't worry about the details." He said with frightening confidence, "I've got everything covered. MetLife Insurance will cover any suspicions." He tucked the phone into his polo shirt pocket and looked around one last time before entering the house through the sliding glass door. I remained hidden for a few more minutes, trying to control the tremors that racked my body under the blazing sun. The sound of the door closing echoed like a gunshot in the silence of the desert afternoon. Now I knew the truth. My son-in-law wasn't just a traitor. He was a potential murderer, and I was his next target in a land where heat kills as much as greed. What I saw in Andre's eyes when he returned to the yard showed me that evil can wear the mask of the perfect American family. He had driven away in his Ford F-150 and was now back in the yard making a second call I couldn't miss. My position behind the cacti gave me a perfect view, but also left me vulnerable to discovery under the relentless Arizona sun. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure Andre could hear it from yards away, competing with the hum of the house's central air conditioning. His first words of this new conversation confirmed that I was witnessing the planning of a crime that rivaled the worst stories on Phoenix News. The thirst for revenge growing within me was tempered by the fear of what was yet to come. "Yes, it's about John," Andre said, pronouncing my name with a contempt that made me feel as if I were hearing my own death sentence being pronounced by a corrupt judge. The hot desert wind stirred the surrounding palm trees, creating dancing shadows that seemed to mock my desperate situation. Andre paced nervously across the paved courtyard, checking the windows of the house every few steps. His paranoia was evident, but so was his determination to execute whatever diabolical plan he had devised. The smell of creosote bush mingled with the metallic taste of fear in my mouth. I needed to hear more, even though each word was torture in the 110-degree Fahrenheit heat. Andre continued, and those words made me realize he had thought through every detail of this betrayal with the precision of an intel engineer. My breathing became ragged as I tried to process the coldness with which he discussed my murder. The sound of planes taking off from Sky Harbor Airport in the distance contrasted with the deathly stillness of what was happening in that Scottsdale residential courtyard. Andre moved even closer to the house, forcing me to crouch deeper behind the barrel cactus to avoid detection. His next words revealed a cruelty I never imagined existed within my family. The person who had toasted me with Californian champagne last Thanksgiving was planning to steal not only my life, but also the inheritance I had built working 40 years in construction. $50,000 of MetLife life insurance is just the beginning, Andre said, with a greed that made me feel sick. Now I understood why he always showed such interest in my finances and my stock market investments. Every seemingly innocent conversation about retirement and 401k had been part of this conspiracy. The heat of the Arizona sun on my face contrasted with the chill that crept up my spine as I realized how long I had been studied like prey in the desert. Andre chuckled softly, a sound that made me realize he took pleasure in plotting my destruction. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was deeply personal. An American, money, insurance, and greed mingling in a deadly recipe. Andre stopped walking and positioned himself near the iron gate through which I had entered, forcing me to move silently to a new position behind the ornamental fountain. His house on 32nd Street is worth at least $400,000, and he has those investments in Fidelity that he thinks no one knows about, he said, revealing knowledge about my financial life that left me in shock. How had he obtained this information? Had Marina shared intimate details about my retirement portfolio with this man who now planned to murder me? The sound of my own heartbeat was deafening as I tried to move silently on the decorative gravel. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled, for discovering this secret could mean hastening my own death in the relentless desert heat. Andre continued, revealing a manipulation that went far beyond my death. He wasn't just planning to kill me. He was planning to control my daughter and use the money from my death for his own diabolical purposes. The air temperature seemed to have risen to 120 degrees as I grasped the extent of this conspiracy. Andre wasn't just a murderer. He was a financial predator who had infiltrated my family with the sole purpose of destroying it from within, like a desert parasite. The scent of desert willow flowers now repulsed me, for everything in that place had become contaminated by his malevolent presence. Overcoming this situation seemed as impossible as surviving Death Valley without water. Andre ended the second call with instructions that made me realize the time to act was running out, faster than water in the desert. "I need to accelerate the schedule," he said, glancing at his Apple Watch. "If everything goes as planned, next Monday he won't be among us to disrupt our plans." He walked back to the house with confident strides, as if he'd just closed a real estate deal in Paradise Valley. I remained motionless for long minutes after the glass door closed, trying to process every word I'd heard as the Arizona sun beat down on my back. The distant sound of children playing in a neighbor's pool reminded me of my granddaughter Isabella, who would lose her grandfather not to natural causes, but to her own father's greed. Monday was 3 days away, and I had that much time to figure out how to save myself from this death trap in the heart of the American desert. The drive back to my house on 32nd Street was the longest of my life, even though it was only 15 minutes through the tree-lined streets of Phoenix. Every red light on Camelback Road gave me too much time to think about the venomous words Andre had uttered. My mind worked like a machine, trying to connect clues I had ignored during years of familiarity. The steering wheel of my Chevy Silverado was wet with sweat from my palms as I drove on autopilot along familiar avenues. The Pueblo and adobe houses of the neighborhood looked different now, as if the entire Valley of the Sun had changed after those revelations. The betrayal had poisoned even my perception of the desert landscape around me. As soon as I got home, I went straight to the office where I kept all my important documents in a metal filing cabinet from Office Depot. The smell of old paper and ink brought me a sense of urgency as I rummaged through alphabetically organized drawers and files. Each document I found seemed to confirm a new part of Andre's conspiracy. Insurance policies from MetLife, State Farm, and Allstate that I didn't remember signing appeared among the papers, all with amounts totaling over $100,000. My breathing became more labored with each discovery in the freezing air conditioning of the house, as each paper was evidence of how I had been manipulated. The sound of the digital clock in the office marked every second that brought me closer to Monday, and each beep reminded me that my life was on a countdown. Among the documents, I found something that felt like a punch in the gut in the middle of the Phoenix day. It was a will I had supposedly signed 6 months ago at the lawyer's office on Thunderbird Road, leaving everything to Marina, but with Andre as executor. My signature looked authentic, but I had no memory of signing it. The words danced before my eyes as I tried to process the extent of this financial betrayal. Andre had either forged my signature or tricked me into signing something I didn't fully understand during one of our family planning consultations. The light from the office's LED lamps seemed dimmer now, as if the shadows were closing in around me. The robbery hadn't begun with my murder. It had been going on for months. I picked up the phone to call my lawyer at Henderson and Associates, but my hand trembled when I realized it was Friday at 6 in the evening. The office would be closed until Monday, the very day Andre had scheduled to execute his diabolical plan. The coincidence couldn't be accidental. He'd calculated every detail of this conspiracy like an accountant at H&R Block. The sound of my own heartbeat was deafening in the silence of the air-conditioned house. I replaced the phone in its cradle and sat down heavily in the ergonomic office chair. The feeling of being completely alone and vulnerable consumed me as I stared at the documents spread out on the oak desk. Andre had perfectly isolated me, cutting off all my options for professional help like a seasoned predator. I decided to investigate further and called Wells Fargo, where I'd held my primary account since the 1990s. After identifying myself with my social security number, I discovered that Andre had been added as an authorized beneficiary on 2 of my accounts, something I'd never approved. The bank clerk confirmed that the changes had been made in person at the Bell Road branch with my supposed authorization and documentation. My voice cracked when I asked about the total value of the accounts. $300,000 was at risk of being stolen by this man I considered family. The smell of cold morning coffee in the kitchen nauseated me as I tried to come to terms with the magnitude of this financial betrayal. Andre had left nothing to chance. Every aspect of my financial life had been compromised like a well-planned computer hack. Night fell over the desert as I continued to uncover more evidence of a conspiracy that had stretched back months, perhaps years. Among the papers, I found receipts from a private investigator from Phoenix Investigations whom I had apparently hired to investigate Andre. But I had never hired a detective, which meant Andre was one step ahead, creating a false narrative based on my senile paranoia. Each discovery was more frightening than the last, revealing a criminal mastermind who had planned my destruction with surgical precision. The sound of planes taking off from Sky Harbor in the distance created an even darker atmosphere. Andre had created false evidence to discredit any accusation I might make against him. The thirst for revenge that burned in my chest was tempered by a reluctant admiration for my tormentor's diabolical intelligence. By the time the digital clock struck midnight, I had discovered the terrible truth. Andre wasn't just planning to kill me on Monday. He had spent 2 years laying the groundwork so my death would appear natural and my family would see him as the devoted son-in-law who would take care of everything. Among the forged documents, I even found a supposed farewell letter written in my handwriting explaining that I was tired of life in the desert and had decided to end my suffering. Cold sweat dripped down my back in the air conditioning as I read words I had never written. Andre had turned my own ranch-style home into a trap, and now I was racing against time to figure out how to escape a web that had been woven around me for years. Overcoming this situation would require intelligence that could rival that of my potential killer on the scorching streets of Phoenix. Saturday arrived with a disturbing normalcy that made me question my own sanity as the sun rose over the Arizona mountains. Sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my iPhone, I knew I had to act as if nothing had changed. The aroma of hot Folgers coffee contrasted with the bitter taste of fear that hadn't left my mouth since the night before. Andre called at 8 in the morning, his voice sounding strangely cheerful as he asked if I'd like to have a barbecue with them on Sunday. The normalcy of the conversation gave me chills, for he was speaking to me knowing he planned to assassinate me in less than 48 hours. I accepted the invitation, keeping my voice steady, but each word was a monumental effort. The betrayal reached levels I hadn't known existed when someone can plan your death while inviting you to a family barbecue. All Saturday morning, I hatched a desperate plan that could either save my life or seal it forever. I decided I needed to confront Andre indirectly, testing his reactions without revealing that I knew everything. The relentless Arizona sun streamed through the living room windows, but the light seemed unable to dispel the darkness that had settled over my life. I set a verbal trap. During the Sunday barbecue, I would falsely announce that I was considering changing my will and leaving everything to the United Way and other Phoenix charities. My revenge would begin with watching the despair in his eyes as he realized his plans could crumble like a house of cards in the desert wind. The silence of the house gave me too much time to think, and every minute that passed showed me new angles to this diabolical conspiracy. If Andre reacted negatively to my lie, I would have the final confirmation of his intentions. The rest of Saturday was a torture of anticipation as I rehearsed every word I would say the next day. The idea of feigning normalcy in front of the man who planned to kill me required an emotional strength I wasn't sure I possessed. The smell of the Papa John's pizza I ordered for dinner nauseated me, my stomach in knots ever since I learned the truth. Every sound in the house, the central air conditioning turning on, the clock on the wall, the hot wind blowing against the windows, seemed amplified, as if my body were on high alert. Andre had stolen my peace of mind, transforming my own adobe house into a place where I couldn't relax. Night took forever to arrive, and when it did, sleep was impossible, even with the air conditioning blasting. Every close of my eyes brought back images of Andre executing his macabre plans under the scorching desert sun. Sunday arrived with a cruel Arizona brightness that made everything even more surreal. I showered and dressed with the care of someone perhaps preparing for their last day. The bathroom mirror reflected a man who had aged 10 years in 2 days, with deep circles under his eyes and wrinkles that seemed to have deepened overnight. I drove my Silvana to Marina's house in Scottsdale, feeling as if I were going to my own execution. The iron gate of the house where I'd learned the truth 2 days earlier greeted me with cruel irony. Andre opened the door with a smile that I now recognized as the perfect mask of an American predator. "John, it's so good to see you, father-in-law," Andre said, hugging me with a warmth that made me feel as if I were being embraced by death itself under the 115-degree sun. His performance was too perfect, every gesture calculated to maintain the facade of a devoted son-in-law. Marina appeared close behind, radiant as ever in her summer dress, completely oblivious to the fact that she was married to a murderer. The smell of barbecue, cooking at the Weber grill, ribs with barbecue sauce, my favorite dish, brought me a deep melancholy at the thought that Andre had used even that detail in his calculations. Isabella ran from the pool to hug me wetly, and I held her tighter than usual, knowing this could be our last embrace. The innocence in her eyes contrasted cruelly with the malice I saw in her father's. The betrayal wasn't just affecting my life. It was destroying the entire fabric of my family in the heart of the American Old West. During the barbecue in the gourmet patio area, I waited for the perfect moment to spring my verbal trap. The conversation flowed normally, with Andre being his usual attentive son-in-law, inquiring about my health and my retirement plans with my 401k. The hypocrisy of his words made me nauseated, but I maintained my composure as we ate ribs and drank cold Budweiser. When Marina left to get apple pie for dessert and Isabella went swimming in the pool, I found my opportunity. "Andre, I've been thinking a lot about my will lately," I began, carefully observing every micro-expression on his face, tanned by the Arizona sun. His posture shifted subtly, his muscles tensed, but he maintained his smile as he held the beer bottle. "You know, I'm considering leaving everything to the United Way and the St. Joseph's Foundation. The family already has their own lives." The words tumbled out of my mouth like bait on a hook, and I saw exactly the moment he bit. Andre tried to hide it, but the mask slipped for a split second, revealing an icy fury that confirmed all my worst fears. "Now, John, you can't be serious," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded too fake in the desert heat. His hands shook slightly as he gripped the Budweiser bottle, and I could see the desperation hidden behind the forced smile. Revenge tasted sweet in that moment under the shade of the awning, as I watched Andre realize that his 2 years of planning might have been for nothing. When Marina returned to the patio with dessert, he immediately changed the subject to the Cardinals game. But the message had been given and received. Andre knew I was a threat to his plan, and that meant Monday had become even more dangerous for me on the scorching streets of Phoenix. Monday arrived like a punctual executioner, and I knew Andre wouldn't waste any time in the relentless Arizona heat. At 6 in the morning, I pretended to leave the house for a made-up trip to Las Vegas, carrying a suitcase and leaving all the lights off. In reality, I checked into a cheap Motel 6 10 minutes away on Van Buren Street, from where I could observe my own home undetected. The stinking room, smelling of stale cigarettes and moldy air conditioning, made me nauseous, but it was the price of survival. Through the fogged-up double-pane window, I had a partial view of my tree-lined street, waiting to spot suspicious movements. Andre's betrayal had turned me into a fugitive from my own life, hiding in a seedy place while he carried out his diabolical plan. Every noise in the motel hallway made me jump, for I didn't know if Andre had discovered my whereabouts. At 9 o'clock that night, as darkness completely enveloped the Valley of the Sun, I saw a figure approaching my house in an unmarked white van. Andre was there, just as I predicted, carrying a dark duffel bag that I couldn't identify from a distance. My heart raced as I watched him circle my ranch-style property, checking every window like a predator studying its prey in the desert. The light from the streetlights revealed his calculated movements, each step planned to leave no trace. He disappeared behind the house for nearly 20 minutes, enough time to execute whatever plan he had in mind. The silence of the Arizona night was broken only by the distant sounds of Interstate 10, creating an ominous soundtrack to what I was witnessing. Andre was trying to steal more than money from me. He was trying to steal my very existence. When Andre reappeared, he was no longer carrying the dark bag, which made me realize he had left something inside my house. My breathing became ragged in the motel's weak air conditioning as I imagined the possibilities: a bomb, poison, a device to cause a natural gas leak. Cold sweat trickled down my back as I watched him check his Apple Watch and make a phone call. His words didn't carry as far as the motel, but his urgent gestures indicated he was reporting the success of the mission to someone. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as the reality of the situation sank in. Andre had set a death trap in my own adobe house. Had I been there that night, as originally planned, I would already be dead in the 105-degree heat that still persisted even into the night. Overcoming this assassination attempt gave me a dangerous confidence that I could win this war. Andre left my property as cautiously as he had arrived, but I continued to watch for another 2 hours through the motel's cheap curtains. Around 11:30 p.m., a second white van pulled up in front of my house, and 2 men emerged carrying equipment that appeared to be from Southwest Gas Company. Even from a distance, I could see they weren't legitimate employees. Their movements were too stealthy, too coordinated for normal technicians. They entered my property using keys, which meant Andre had given these criminals access to my home. The sound of my own breathing was deafening in the hushed silence of the room as I watched these men set up what was clearly the scene of a natural gas accident. 20 minutes later, they left the house, and the van disappeared into the darkness of the Phoenix streets, leaving behind a booby-trapped vehicle that was supposed to explode with my body inside. All night long, I lay awake in the stinking Van Buren motel room, plotting my revenge against Andre and his accomplices. The heist of my life had failed by mere hours, and now I had all the evidence I needed to destroy the man who had attempted to murder me. The motel's stale coffee aroma mingled with my growing determination to take justice into my own hands. Andre had underestimated his victim, thinking I was just a helpless old retiree waiting to die in the Arizona heat. Every detail of what I had witnessed seared itself into my memory as evidence for the final confrontation. The sound of distant Phoenix PD sirens made me think of how sweet it would be to hear those same sirens coming to arrest Andre. His betrayal had awakened a thirst for justice I hadn't known I possessed. On Tuesday morning, I called the Phoenix Fire Department to report a possible gas leak at my 32nd Street home. They arrived within 15 minutes in their red fire trucks and found exactly what I expected: a homemade device connected to the natural gas line that would cause an accidental explosion within the next few hours. The fire chief, a 20-year veteran, confirmed that it was criminal sabotage and that I would have died instantly if I had been home. His words echoed in my ears like a death sentence miraculously commuted. As Southwest Gas Forensics gathered evidence, I felt a mixture of terror and satisfaction. Terror at having come so close to death, and satisfaction at having all the evidence necessary to destroy Andre. The man who had planned my murder for 2 years had made the fatal mistake of underestimating the intelligence of an American worker. Now it was my turn to play, and I held all the right cards in my hand. The call to the Phoenix Police Department came in at 10 in the morning, and when I explained the entire situation, including the wiretaps I had placed in Andre's yard, they treated the case as attempted first-degree murder. The detective in charge, a Hispanic American with a Tucson accent, confirmed that the device found in my home could have killed not only me, but also nearby neighbors, elevating the charges to domestic terrorism. Andre was arrested at 2 in the afternoon at his workplace at the air conditioning company in Glendale in front of all his colleagues. The look of absolute shock on his face as the peerless handcuffs were placed gave me more satisfaction than any revenge I could have planned. Marina called in tears an hour later, still in disbelief that her husband had attempted to murder his own father. But the evidence was irrefutable. The man who had stolen 2 years of my peace of mind would now spend the next 25 years in Arizona State Prison paying for every second of terror he inflicted on me. Andre's arrest was just the beginning of an even more shocking discovery that would shake our family to its core. During the FBI investigation, police found evidence that he had done this before to his own parents in Michigan 15 years earlier. The car accident on I-75 that killed his parents and left him with a $400,000 inheritance had been no accident at all. My blood ran cold when the detective showed me the old Michigan State Police case files, riddled with inconsistencies that had been ignored at the time. Andre wasn't a first-time criminal. He was a serial killer, targeting his family. The smell of old paper from the police files mingled with my nausea at the realization that Marina had married a man who had killed before. The betrayal ran even deeper than I imagined. He had targeted our family specifically because we trusted him after researching retired widowers in Phoenix. Marina arrived at the Phoenix PD station at 4 in the afternoon, with Isabella at the Scottsdale Unified School District school, completely devastated by the revelation that she had been married to a murderer for 10 years. Her tears soaked the linoleum floor of the interrogation room as she tried to process how she had been so completely deceived. "Daddy, I didn't know anything. You have to believe me," she repeated through sobs that broke my heart. The sound of her broken voice made me realize that Andre had stolen more than money or security from us. He had stolen our ability to trust each other. Every hug Marina had given him, every "I love you" she had whispered, had all been based on a lie built over the corpses of her parents in Michigan. The pain in her eyes showed me that some betrayals leave scars that never fully heal, not even under the healing Arizona sun. During the interrogation, Andre tried to implicate Marina as an accomplice, claiming she knew about the gambling debts that motivated him to plan my murder. The police discovered that he had lost over $100,000 online gambling over the past 2 years in Las Vegas casinos and on illegal websites, using credit cards in my daughter's name. Each revelation was a stab in the heart for Marina, who realized how systematically she had been manipulated and used. The air in the police station was heavy with the smell of institutional disinfectant and human desperation. Andre was showing his true colors, a coward trying to drag my innocent daughter into the hole he himself had dug. My revenge became sweeter with each lie he told, as each false word only solidified his conviction in the American justice system. The FBI investigation revealed horrifying details about how Andre had studied our family for years before marrying Marina. He had a complete dossier on our finances, routines, and relationships stored in a Wells Fargo safe deposit box that police found in his workshop in an industrial area of Phoenix. Among the documents were photographs of me taken without my knowledge, copies of bank statements, and even blueprints of my house marked with vulnerable spots for forced entry. The detective explained that Andre had chosen Marina not out of love, but because she was the only child of a retired construction worker with considerable wealth. Every romantic moment of their courtship, every marriage proposal on Camelback Mountain, every declaration of love had been part of a cold and calculated plan to steal our family fortune. The depth of his betrayal left me speechless. He had murdered my daughter's love before even attempting to physically murder me. 3 weeks after the trial in Maricopa County Superior Court, Marina came to my house with a proposal that took me completely by surprise. "Daddy, I want you to teach me everything about the family business and investing," she said with a determination in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. The experience with Andre had transformed my daughter from a Scottsdale housewife into a strong woman who no longer wanted to depend on anyone financially. The aroma of fresh Starbucks coffee she brewed as we talked brought me a sense of normalcy I thought I'd lost forever.
Isabella played in the pool, still not fully understanding why her father wouldn't be coming home. Marina had decided to rebuild her life from scratch in Arizona, and she wanted me to help her become independent. Overcoming this was happening for the whole family, not just me. The divorce proceedings were finalized in 4 months in Maricopa County Court, with Marina retaining full custody of Isabella and relinquishing any rights to the assets Andre had acquired with stolen money. The Scottsdale home where they lived was sold by a Coldwell Banker real estate agent, and Marina decided to move to a smaller apartment in Tempe, but one she had earned through her own hard work. She landed a job at an accounting firm in the Phoenix metropolitan area, using the skills she had developed managing household finances during the marriage. The sound of her laughter, slowly returning to our conversations, told me the healing was beginning. Andre had tried to destroy our family, but he had ended up strengthening our bonds. With each passing week, Marina became more confident and independent, proving that not all betrayals result in destruction. Some result in rebirth in the American Wild West. A year after Andre's incarceration in the Arizona State Penitentiary, our family had found a new balance based on complete honesty and absolute transparency. Marina installed an ADT security system in our new apartment and made a point of teaching me how to use all the devices. "We'll never be caught off guard again," she said, as we programmed the security cameras. The smell of fresh paint on the apartment walls symbolized the fresh start we all deserved. Isabella had begun therapy with a psychologist in Phoenix to cope with her father's absence, and she was slowly understanding that some people do bad things even when they pretend to be good. The sweetest revenge wasn't seeing Andre in prison. It was seeing my family rebuild, stronger than before. Andre had stolen our innocence, but he couldn't steal our mutual love. And that made him the true loser in this American story of betrayal and overcoming.
The call from Arizona State Prison arrived on a Tuesday at 6 in the morning, 2 years after Andre's conviction. The prison warden informed me that my former son-in-law had attempted suicide in his cell and was in critical condition in the infirmary. My first reaction was a confusing mix of satisfaction and concern. Satisfaction at seeing him suffer the consequences of his actions, and worry about what this might mean for Marina and Isabella. The aroma of my morning Folgers coffee had turned bitter as I processed the news, debating whether or not to tell my daughter. Andre had lost everything: the family he had tried to exploit, the freedom he had squandered, and now even his will to live. The betrayal he had orchestrated for years had finally turned against him, in a cruel irony that even I had not anticipated in the relentless Arizona heat. Marina received the news with a coolness that surprised and prouded me at the same time. "He made his choices, Daddy," she said, continuing to prepare breakfast for Isabella as if nothing had happened in her modern Tempe kitchen. The strong woman my daughter had become no longer showed any compassion for the man who had tried to destroy our family. The sound of the Black & Decker toaster interrupting our silence created a domestic normalcy that contrasted with the gravity of what we were discussing. Marina had learned to separate the Andre she thought she knew from the criminal he truly was. Her emotional overcoming was complete. She felt nothing but indifference for him. The theft of her innocence had been compensated for by the gain of an inner strength that no one else could take from her. 3 days later, Andre died in the state prison infirmary without ever regaining consciousness. The news came via a formal phone call from the prison administration, informing them of the legal proceedings and the need to make funeral decisions. Marina heard the news while helping Isabella with her math homework, and her only reaction was a sigh of relief. "Now it's really over," she said, hugging her daughter, who still didn't fully understand the meaning of her father's death. The smell of Ticonderoga pencils and Isabella's schoolwork paper brought me a comforting sense of normal life continuing. Andre had chosen betrayal as a way of life and death as a means of escape, but we had chosen to move on. The final revenge had not come from our hands, but from his own conscience. Andre's funeral was a solitary affair at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery, attended only by a few co-workers from the air conditioning company who still didn't know the full truth about his crimes. Marina decided not to attend, and I fully supported her decision. "He doesn't deserve our tears," she said, choosing to spend that day at Papago Park with Isabella. The family's absence at the funeral of the man who had attempted to murder us sent a clear message to anyone who still doubted the gravity of his crimes. The silence where the laments of a grieving wife and daughter should have been spoke louder than any speech. Andre had died alone, as he had lived, surrounded by lies and betrayal. Our family's complete recovery included the right not to feign mourning for someone who never truly loved us. With Andre's death, complicated legal issues arose surrounding the inheritance he had stolen from his own parents in Michigan 15 years earlier. Investigators discovered that the $400,000 still existed, invested in secret Charles Schwab accounts he had never touched. Federal law mandated that the money should revert to his parents' rightful heirs, but since there was no family remaining, the funds were directed to the National Domestic Violence Hotline and other victim support organizations. Marina found the irony poetic. The money Andre had obtained by killing his parents would now help other families torn apart by violence. The aroma of legal documents and pen ink mingled with our satisfaction at seeing justice so appropriately served. Andre had stolen to feed his greed, but in the end, his money served to heal the wounds of other American families. 6 months after Andre's death, Marina surprised me with an announcement that completely changed our perspective on the future. "Dad, I've decided to major in psychology at Arizona State University to help other women who have gone through what I've been through," she said, showing me her university acceptance letter. At 37, my daughter had decided to turn her pain into purpose, using her experience with betrayal and manipulation to help other victims. The sound of pages turning in ASU textbooks as she studied at night had become the soundtrack of our home. Isabella, now 10, proudly declared at Hohokam Elementary School that her mother would be a doctor of feelings. The most powerful revenge against Andre was seeing how Marina had transformed his attempt at destruction into a force to build better lives. He had tried to steal our future, but he had inadvertently given us a greater purpose than we ever had in the Valley of the Sun. The second anniversary of Andre's death passed unnoticed by our family, too busy living to remember to mark the death of the one who tried to kill us. Marina was in her 3rd semester of psychology at ASU. Isabella had won a school award for an essay on families that grow stronger, and I had started giving talks on financial security for seniors at the Phoenix Community Center. Our house was filled with laughter, plans for the future, and dreams that Andre could never have imagined would survive his betrayal. The smell of new books from Barnes & Noble and fresh coffee had completely replaced any memory of the terror we experienced years ago. Andre had become just a story we told to alert others to the danger signs, but no longer an open wound in our lives in the Valley of the Sun. 5 years after that fateful Friday, when I heard the words that changed everything at my daughter's gate in Scottsdale, our family had completely transformed. Marina graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in family trauma psychology and opened her own clinic in the Tempe area, treating women who had gone through similar experiences. Isabella, now 13, had become a confident teenager who spoke openly about the importance of trusting your instincts when something felt wrong. The scent of success and renewal hung over our Sunday dinner table at Olive Garden, where we shared stories of achievement rather than fear. Andre's betrayal had become the catalyst for the best period of our lives, an irony not lost on either of us. The man who had tried to steal everything from us had inadvertently given us the most precious gifts: strength, unity, and purpose in the heart of Arizona. During one of my financial security talks at the Phoenix Senior Center, a 62-year-old man approached me at the end of the event with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Miller, I think my son-in-law is planning something against me," he whispered, telling a story eerily similar to my own. The same persistent questions about finances, the same sudden interest in State Farm life insurance, the same documents appearing without clear explanation. The cold sweat that ran down my forehead reminded me exactly how I felt when I discovered the truth about Andre. I handed the man my business card and said, "Trust your instincts. They could save your life." The sweetest revenge against Andre was to use my experience to protect other families from predators like him. Every person I helped identify danger signs was a victory over the evil he had represented. Marina received a proposal from HarperCollins to write a book about her experience, but initially hesitated about exposing our story so publicly. "Daddy, will people understand that we weren't naive, just trusting?" she asked during one of our weekly breakfasts at IHOP. The smell of the syrupy pancakes she ordered brought me a sense of normalcy that Andre could never completely destroy. I convinced my daughter that our story could save other American families, and she agreed to write the book on one condition. A portion of the royalties would be donated to the National Center for Victims of Crime. The betrayal Andre orchestrated would be turned into income to help his victims, a poetic irony that gave us profound satisfaction. The theft of our peace had become a source of hope for others facing similar situations. Marina's book became a New York Times bestseller, selling over 50,000 copies in its first year and being translated into several languages. The title, Masked in Love: How I Survived Marriage to a Killer, resonated with thousands of women who recognized similar signs in their own relationships. During book signings at Barnes & Noble across the country, Marina frequently heard stories of women who had left suspicious relationships after reading our story. The sound of pages turning and Sharpie pens signing autographs became the soundtrack to our revenge against Andre. Each copy sold represented a victory over his attempt to silence us forever. He had stolen 10 years of Marina's life, but she had turned that experience into a tool to save decades of other American women's lives. Isabella decided to follow in her mother's footsteps and announced her intention to attend law school at the University of Arizona, specializing in family crimes. "Grandpa, I want to make people like my biological father pay for their crimes before they hurt anyone," she said during her 14th birthday at Chuck E. Cheese. The determination in my granddaughter's eyes filled me with pride and hope at the same time. The smell of birthday cake mingled with the satisfaction of seeing how our family had transformed trauma into purpose. Andre had tried to raise a generation of victims, but inadvertently created a generation of advocates for justice. The ultimate triumph was seeing Isabella grow up fearless, but with conscience, prepared to protect others from the same betrayal that nearly destroyed our family. Andre's legacy would not be terror, but the determination of 3 generations to bring justice. One Sunday afternoon, exactly 7 years after discovering Andre's conspiracy, I was in the backyard of my new home in Ahwatukee, playing with Isabella when she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandpa, do you forgive what my biological father tried to do?" she asked, stopping swimming in the pool to look me directly in the eye. The sound of birds singing in the pines created a serenity that contrasted with the depth of the question. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, my dear. It means not letting anger consume our happiness. Andre had stolen years of our peace, but he couldn't steal our ability to love and trust again. The betrayal he engineered had become the foundation of a stronger, wiser family. Watching Isabella swim again, I realized that Andre had lost everything: his life, his family, his respect, and most of all, the chance to know the extraordinary woman his daughter would become. Today, when I pass by the Scottsdale housing complex where it all began, I no longer feel anger or fear. Marina sold the property to a Hispanic-American family, and they fill the courtyard with children's laughter and the sounds of normal life. The scent of the same desert rose Marina planted years ago still perfumes the air, but now they represent renewal rather than betrayal. Andre is buried in Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery, in a simple grave that no one visits. The most powerful revenge was living well despite him, building happiness on the rubble of his diabolical plans. Our family not only survived his betrayal, we thrived because of it, turning every attempt to rob us into fuel for our resilience. And when people ask me how I managed to spot the danger in time, I always answer the same thing. Trust your instincts, because sometimes the words you overhear can be the ones that save your life in the relentless heat of the American desert. This story haunts and strengthens me every day here in Arizona. Could you identify the signs of a betrayal as elaborate as the one I experienced? How many families are facing similar situations right now without realizing the danger? Marina always says that our story is not about revenge, but about overcoming. Do you agree? If you were Marina, would you have been able to forgive as completely as she did? And if you were me, would you have had the courage to confront a killer knowing it could hasten my own death? Leave your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss other true stories that can save lives. Share this video with people you love. We never know when our experience might protect someone from a similar tragedy. Remember, trust your instincts. They can save your lives.